Have you ever seen an old painting or Halloween costume featuring a doctor with a long, curved bird beak mask? It's one of the most haunting images from history, part science, part superstition, and entirely terrifying. But what if I told you that those beaked masks weren't just costumes, but an actual part of medieval medicine? Welcome to Arcane History Hub, where we explore the eerie, forgotten, and spine-chilling corners of our past. If stories like these captivate your curiosity, make sure you stay till the very end, because today, we're diving into the disturbing history of why medieval doctors wore bird beak masks. Our story begins in the 14th century, a time when Europe was gripped by one of the deadliest pandemics in recorded history, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, the bubonic plague ravaged the continent, killing an estimated 25 to 50 million people. That's roughly one-third of Europe's population at the time. Cities turned into ghost towns. Streets were lined with bodies. Entire families were wiped out in a matter of days. Fear wasn't just in the air, it was the air. But with little knowledge of bacteria, viruses, or how disease spread, medieval people turned to what they did know: religion, astrology, and folk beliefs. Many believed the plague was punishment from God, others blamed bad air, called miasma, or even planetary alignments. There were also widespread accusations against marginalized communities, including Jews, whom some falsely blamed for poisoning wells. It was an age of panic, misinformation, and desperation. In the middle of all this chaos stood the plague doctors. These were men, often not trained physicians, but hired by cities and towns, tasked with treating the sick and recording the dead. They were paid well because their job was essentially a death sentence. To do it, they needed protection, not just from the disease, but from the horror they faced daily. Enter the bird beak mask. The design most people recognize today, the long-beaked mask, black robe, wide-brimmed hat, and wooden cane didn't become widespread until the 1600s, but it became iconic. The mask itself was meant to act as a primitive form of a gas mask. Doctors believed that disease spread through foul-smelling air, the miasma theory, so they filled the beak of the mask with strong-smelling herbs, spices, and flowers: lavender, rose petals, mint, camphor, and cloves. These scents were meant to purify the air the doctor breathed. The mask also kept patients and their putrid breath at a distance. The eye holes were covered with glass, and the entire mask was made of leather or waxed fabric, creating a kind of protective shell. The rest of the outfit had its own logic. The robe was made of heavy waxed fabric or leather, meant to repel bodily fluids. The gloves, boots, and hat were all part of a full-body attempt at armor against the unseen. And then there was the cane. The doctor's cane was more than just a walking stick. It allowed the physician to poke and prod patients without touching them. It was also used to examine bodies, direct family members, or, as some grim stories suggest, to keep desperate patients at bay. To the people of the time, the plague doctor was both a symbol of hope and a harbinger of death. When one walked into your town, it meant the plague was there. And while they were supposed to help, many people believed the doctors themselves brought sickness. Some even fled at the sight of them. But here's the twist. The famous beaked outfit wasn't universally worn during the original Black Death in the 14th century. The iconic costume we associate with plague doctors came much later. During outbreaks in the 17th century, especially in places like France and Italy. So where did it come from? The design is often credited to Charles Delorme, the chief physician to several French kings, including Louis XIII. Around 1619, he created the bird mask costume for protection during plague outbreaks. He believed that if he could avoid the miasma, he could avoid infection. The outfit was practical for its time and chilling in its appearance. The masks were expensive too. Most were made for wealthier city doctors. Poorer healers or rural medics couldn't afford the full getup. Some used cloth masks, others nothing at all, which might explain why mortality rates among plague doctors were staggeringly high. Over time, the image of the plague doctor became deeply ingrained in European memory. Art from the 17th and 18th centuries often portrayed them as dark figures moving through misty alleys and corpse-filled streets. In Venice, the bird mask even became part of carnival tradition, worn as a grim reminder of mortality during the celebration of life. But were the masks effective? Not really, at least not in the way people thought. They may have offered some minimal protection against fleas or fluids, but they did nothing against the true culprit of the plague, the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which was spread by fleas on rats. Since medieval people didn't understand germ theory, their protective gear was based more on fear and assumption than science. And yet, the very act of trying to protect themselves, even incorrectly, shows that people were beginning to think about disease prevention. It was a grim, bleak step toward modern medicine. Today, the image of the plague doctor survives in pop culture, in video games, horror films, and even music videos. The bird beak mask has become a symbol of death, fear, and mystery. But behind that image is a real story of doctors walking into the jaws of death, wearing leather and glass, armed with herbs and a cane, hoping they could do some good. So the next time you see that haunting mask, remember, it wasn't meant to scare. It was meant to save. What do you think? Was the beaked mask genius or madness? Let us know in the comments. And if you love diving into strange and forgotten corners of history, don't forget to subscribe. Arcane History Hub brings you eerie, true stories every week. Until next time, stay curious.